Okay, this is my week 2 recording for ADDL. This is my match against Critic and Skeletor. And yeah, another post-com. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do live com this week because we played the game while I was out of town. We're celebrating my sister's birthday with some family, so it was a bit too loud to be able to record live during the game. It's off in a side room. So, yeah. I swear though, eventually I will actually do a live com, but for now, yeah, we'll just do the same thing as last week. I'll give you guys a quick rundown of the matchup and my build, then we'll go into the game. So yeah, this week we're playing against Critic and Skeletor. Um, I've played Skeletor once a while ago, um, and to be honest, I just remember I lost and that my friends gave me shit because well, I lost to somebody who had the username Gayskeletor, and they're like, "God damn, bro, that's a funny name." uh, so yeah, I remember him because I got given a ton of shit for losing against him. But to be honest, I don't really remember the game. I do remember that I used to suck back then, so I've improved a lot since. But yeah, should be fun. Get my revenge against Skeletor, or try not to get clowned. But yeah, as for the matchup, yeah, the matchup's interesting. Zero Aura is quite strong against my team because my ground type's Garchomp, so he can play rough my Garchomp, which means that logically I kind of expect them to lean towards a physical Zera because you can knock a Rotom, remove its boots, have it weaken over the course of a match to rocks. Um, and yeah, Plasma Fist is relatively powerful. Um, so it's my Adamant Plasma Fist is decent damage against Clef, even if I run unaware. I have to run quite a bit of Fizz Def to actually be able to take it on. Um, and then even if I do have a lot of Fizz Def and I'm unaware, I'm pretty sure like you can take away my lefties, and then you can just force my Clef to take Rock's Chip, and you can play around it that way. So it's like Sarah's decently good. Otherwise, Bulk Up is overpowering. Player Off also helps him cover for Zarude. So it's a pretty simple set, but it can be very effective in this matchup if they support it correctly. So it's kind of like the main idea. There are like a couple other sets with Zero Horror, but in general, that's like the main concern. Um, yeah. Following that, they have a Gliscor. Gliscor's decent here as well. It's a little concerning because with Gliscor, there's always a fear that they can take an SD set and just roost on my Slowbro. Um, because Slowbro has a lot of defensive responsibility here, they can easily take one of Talonflame or Aggron and give them Toxic for the purpose of, well, putting my bro on a timer, and then you can simply restore it with SD Gliscor, and that's just going to make bro like an ineffective response. So I'll have to find another way around Gliscor with this build. But Slowbro is still a nice initial pivot, but yeah, SD variants of Gliscor can be quite annoying because of that. Should also be noted that he can run Stone Edge or Facade, and Stone Edge is going to be really annoying for the likes of Rotom Heat and Torn. The initial damage, like the extra initial damage, the extra punch, is going to make it much harder to pivot around an SD Gliscor. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a set that was in my mind. In addition to that, I mean, you got your standard like defog sets. I don't think they'd try some sort of toxic store Gliscor. It's extremely bad against Tornadus, Slowbro, and Clefable. If I'm running a Magic-Eye Clefable, it's hard-walled, and even if I'm not, I can just pivot infinitely between Torn and Slowbro, and it's really difficult for him to force any type of significant progress with a Toxic Gliscor. So I don't expect that set. But yeah, probably like defog pivot or SD, but most likely SD, since I don't think Gliscor's an effective check to most of my Pokemon. Like, it's a decent pivot. They can't all like immediately punish it, but in general, it's like they each have their ways, and they just have better resources. like better options to checking some of my threats rather than relying on Gliscor. SD is a good set. It can punish an ill-prepared team. If I'm over reliant on Slowbro to check it, then an SD set can very quickly get out of hand. So I kind of expect them to take that. At the very least, they could try to soften me up with that type of Gliscor. Kyurem's always a threat, man. This Pokemon is menacing. It's banned from OU for a reason. Extremely difficult to switch into. It's interesting because I have, I say, four decent soft checks. Clefable, Rotom, Metagross, and Ordino. Now, I'm not taking Ordino. Once again, I think it's too passive, a little too slow, and it doesn't give me enough offensive utility for the role that it, like, for the space that it takes on my team. So I'll have to settle for three soft checks. I'm definitely, uh, I don't know. You'll see it with my team. Like fitting Metagross on was not so simple, but I did decide to do so just because Kyurem's so threatening, and having a spit F Metagross is definitely going to go a long way to help. But even with, if he gets his plays right, like Dragon coverage can just decimate Rotom. Sub variants of Kyurem can become problematic for Rotom, depending on what my set is. Especially if I try to force like Nasty Plot Overheat, because I just get destroyed by sub. I think everyone's Sub Zero, Gliscor, Kyurem, and they all just completely destroy Overheat Rotom. So it's definitely something I need to be aware of and prep. And yeah, Kyurem, like with some sort of boosting item, can easily blow past Clefable. If they really want, they can also just run Flash Cannon. And then Metagross is just, um, yeah, dude, Kyurem's so strong. Like Earth Power just does so much to Metagross, even Spidev. It's quite easy for the Kyurem to work through a Metagross if they get their plays right. So definitely a scary Pokemon in this matchup. Sylveon, I think the main thing with Sylveon here is that it provides sustainability to the likes of Mega Aggron and I suppose Zeraora as well, but it's mainly the Mega Aggron that's significant. Keeping that Pokemon around is can be very irritating for some of my guys like Zarude and Metagross. They kind of struggle to force progress into the Aggron. Zarude struggles with both Aggron and Sylveon. Um, so yeah, very potent call there. The Sylveon in general is just yeah really nice for his team. Having that type of that cleric option and the wish passing for Aggron is quite useful for him. Um, Yeah, and it's hard to bench a Sylveon against a Mega Garchomp. Granted, I don't think Sylveon's a very effective Mega Garchomp check, so I think they'll need to find some creative strategy, some sort of like a multiple Pokemon core designed to like pivot around and revenge guild the Garchomp without like allowing me to force too much progress, something like that. Because Garchomp's just so powerful. Sylveon, like, none of these Pokemon can check on their own, pretty much, right? Talonflame, I mean, yeah, it's a Talonflame. Speed is always useful, but I'm not sure if they will consider it. I can see them taking it if they want removal and don't want to dedicate it to Gliscor. Outside of that, probably don't take Talonflame because it's never forcing any progress. It's just gonna switch into like Zarude. It's not even a guaranteed Metagross switch, but due to just due to Rock Slide. So yeah, and I guess you shouldn't be scared of Venomoth. It's not that good here, but Talonflame would also just completely shut that down. Lycanroc. Okay, this is like another similar to Kyurem. In fact, I think Lycanroc is extremely scary just because with expert bout it can clean blow past bro once with rocks support or like with a toxic, which can like you can achieve that with Talonflame or Aggron. Um, and then with that, if I can't rely on Slowbro, I don't really have a reliable Lycanroc check. Outside of that, similar to Zera, I can rely on Player Off to cover both Garchomp and Zarude and even Sulk, and then you just crunch the bro and Stone Edge everything else. You don't even need a Sarok because of its speed tier, unless you're like especially scared of Torn. And if you're like very scared of Clefable, you could also consider Ironhead instead of SD. Although SD is definitely better. Um, But yeah, Gastrodon, uh, it's just a great Rotom Heat check. Can help with a Garchomp. Kind of annoying for me to pivot into, depending on what my team is. Obviously, it also offers Clear Smog for Carmine Clefable, which is quite good against his team, since his main resist is Aggron. Talonflame isn't really a great Carmine Clef check. So yeah, Gastrodon can help them fill that void, the lack of Clef check, because you got to respect Carmine Clef. Then you have the Aggron. Yeah. I mean, it's an Aggron. It's going to body your Metagross, use a Rude. It's going to be annoying for Clefable and Torn. Uh, and then even Garchomp and Salt can't immediately kill it, and it can threaten to. Well, it can Ice Punch Garchomp, and it can just, like, Heavy Slam's going to do a million to Sulk. So it's very, very annoying Pokemon if you can keep it healthy, which is why the Sylveon Aggron Core is so effective. And then you kind of have just. Skuntank and Go-Go are kind of like, not really that significant. Um, I don't really see a specific reason to take Skuntank here, unless you're like crazy scared of. No, there's just no reason to take Skuntank. Any niche that I can see Skuntank offering here, like other Pokemon do it better. I guess if you were to force it, maybe you could take Nasty Plot, but even then, like, it doesn't have the speed to. It's not that good. Yeah. And then Go-Go is just a complete dead weight. He's not going to be able to force any helpful progress against this team. And it doesn't even check anything of note, so yeah, definitely not coming. So this is my prep with all that in mind. I did decide to bench Tornadus. Now looking at my team, Tornadus against their team. I think the main issue that I have with Torn here is that you got Sylveon, Gastrodon, Aggron, all of which are decent checks, right? They help contain that Torn relatively well. Even Gliscor and Kyurem can help contain that Torn. And then you couple that with Zera, Kyurem, and Lycanroc, like that. Basically, their offense shreds Torn. Their team isn't particularly weak to Torn, and it's not that Torn didn't have value here. Like I could make a Torn like do some work here as a pivot, but I just felt as though there are other Pokemon I could have on my team that just had more potential value and just did more for the build. So I decided to bench it, which is quite unusual given how just good of a Pokemon Taunty is. But yeah, this is a rare occasion where you get to see it benched. But yeah, Helmet for Step Bro. This is just targeted at the Aggron specifically. It helps with the Lycanroc Dust, of course, and it's also a nice pivot in on Gliscor and Talonflame, which I don't really expect. Like the Burrow's not gonna handle the Gliscor on its own, and the Talonflame I don't expect to be a legitimate threat. And it can also pivot in on Gastrodon, because this build actually doesn't have any other Pokemon that can really effectively come in on Gastro. So yeah, this is just Fizz Dev. Toxic I thought was a nice move to catch things like Zeracurum, Sylveon, Gastro, and then Scald hits pretty much everything else. And then otherwise I'm teleporting into a threat. So yeah, cool. Next is Garchomp. Garchomp, pretty simple. SD3 attacks. Because I have Metagross on this build, I didn't feel the need to run Rocks, which meant I could prioritize running SD, which just allows Garchomp to be the best breaker it can possibly be here. I specifically was creeping, let me think. I think I was creeping Kyurem with non-Mega Garchomp, and then I was and that speed creep also covers Modest Kyurem with Mega Garchomp. So in case if I committed to Mega Revolving to get the extra damage against the likes of Gliscor, Sylveon, Gastrodon, etc., or even the bulk for Zero or Lycan, then that's cool. The speed still has some relevance potentially. Because Modest Kyurem is a lot scarier than Timid, especially for things like Cliff, where those damage rolls are pretty significant. But yeah, here I have my Unaware Clef. Unaware Clef just covers so much. I think when I was building this, I was starting to fear Carmine Zero for whatever reason. I think it was just because I was afraid of getting set up on with my Rotom. So if he subs and starts Carmining, I don't know. And honestly, in hindsight, I don't know why I expected that when Play Rough is such an obvious bring here, but yeah, whatever. More importantly, this Clefable, I decided to make it Unaware Ice Beam as well, which means that it can just completely shit on Gliscor. And it also just helps contain random setup Pokemon, Dragonlance Kyurem, Carmine Sylveon, Curse Gastrodon. I mean, setup, Talonflame, and Aggron aren't really quite as problematic. I have other ways of dealing with them. Well, not really. Actually, Aggron could have done a lot here, but I wasn't really expecting setup on that, I guess. Um, so yeah, that's that. I guess I kind of expected, I don't know, maybe under prep for that in hindsight. This build was a little bit rushed. I made it like last night, just before going to bed, because I've had a pretty busy week, as always. But yeah, that's just kind of like pretty simple clef aromatherapy. Also nice. I don't like taking non-aromatherapy unaware clef because, well, it's an unaware clef. I'm going to be sitting on the field for prolonged exchanges. If it gets toxic, then it's game over. But like having this aromatherapy is just nice insurance in case something goes wrong and it does get status. And it could also just support things like Rotom and Sober, which specifically Rotom I felt was really cool. If I can remove toxics from it, it can help the Rotom Force progress long term, since this is a very nasty set against them. No pun intended. So yeah, Scarf's a pretty simple set here, just meant for speed control. Being faster than Lycan and Zero is really, really helpful, and it can quite easily clean. That's part of the idea with Helmet Bro, is helping weaken this Garchomp. Sorry, my brain's a little bit ahead of where my mouth is. Weaken the Aggron so that Garchomp can remove Sylveon, and then with those two like crippled or gone, the Zarude has a pretty good end game. But yeah, that was kind of my thoughts there. And obviously, it's just like, yeah, nice to have something to revenge the likes of Zera and Lycan, and even Kyurem. Because outside of Zarude, if I Mega Evolve my Garchomp, I don't actually have anything with the guaranteed outspeed. So then you have this Rotom set, which is honestly, I'm quite happy with this set. One of the things I noticed in prep is that their team severely lacked a ghost response. So I was like, okay, how? I was thinking, like, I wasn't actively looking for a way to punish that. It was just an idea that was in the back of my head. And then another thought came up where I was like, I really want Rotom to help me cover this aura, since I thought it was quite scary. And then I was trying to think of different Rotom sets that I could take that could allow my Rotom not to just be a like dead weight defensive piece on my team. And then I was like, hold on, um, I can run Hex Rotom and it can do a lot against this team. Because Hex allows me to really push through sub Gliscor as well, which was a Pokemon I was specifically quite scared of. And the cool thing about Hex is that if I get nasty plots going, I can definitely find an opportunity to Toxic a Gastrodon, and then a boosted Hex to Gastro does a crazy amount of damage. So this nasty plot but Rotom could definitely do a lot of work. I think the main concern with this set in prep was that I was a little worried about how I'd play it, so that I don't want to reveal my full set, because once my full set is revealed, they could potentially try to go aggron on it. So I wanted to hold back on using one of Toxic or Pain Split if possible. So that was kind of like the main concern with the set, because I didn't feel comfortable dropping either. Pain Split specifically was really nice to help me against Gliscor and prolonged exchanges, or even I guess Kyurem, depending on how that exchange plays out. And then Toxic is really nice just to help the Rotom be able to force progress for itself, which I think is quite important. And then Metagross is pretty simple: Spit F, Rocks, Toxic, just to help it force progress against Zero and Gastro, and then Iron Head Ice Punch covers pretty much everything else. Toxic also covers Talonflame, and if he decides to come in with Aggron, he takes a little bit more chip, and then I can go into Rocky Helmet Burrow and Telly to regain momentum, forces him to make an aggressive double. And then if I want to punish that double, I have other options apart from Slowbro. It's not my only Aggron switching, so cool. So yeah, that's the prep. That's the matchup. Let's get into the game. Okay, switch sides. So yeah, a couple of things that I immediately noticed on lead was the lack of Talonflame, the lack of Lycanroc. Lycanroc is a big one. It actually eases the pressure off of my team a lot, because it looks like they went for a much more defensive approach. Which definitely plays into my game plan, where I have two very effective breakers and then just a Scarfer and some fat. So I have a pretty simple game plan. Uh, Soften his team up with my fat, get in one of my breakers, break, and then win with Zarude, or just uh, or like as the game progresses, one of my defensive Pokemon could even open up as win cons. So yeah. Anyways, I was thinking for this lead, basically pretty simple thought process. I was looking at his team and I was like, okay, if he leads Kyurem, he leads Kyurem, but I like Bro because I don't actually want to give him free rocks with Aggron. I want to punish him for it. And I don't, in general, I just didn't want to give him free rocks because I felt like that could definitely cause problems for me in the long run with Noxera since I don't have removal. Uh, so I wanted to lead Bro and at least get something in exchange for that, even if it's just Scold Chip. And if he leads something like Kyurem, so be it. I can just pivot into my Metagross and then I get my own rocks up very early, which is completely fine by me. Um, so yeah, uh, good thing I checked. I was about to click play, but I noticed the music wasn't off. Okay, cool. So yeah, I lead Bro and everything to plan. They lead their Aggron, and I'm like, okay, cool. I can just take some Scold Chip off of this. And here I'm like, okay, you toxic, so this just means that if you want to get your rocks up, I get more chip. So I scold again. In the game, I actually swore at myself because I was like, oh my god, bro, I actually burnt it. Because in my head, I really wanted to toxic this Kyurem, but in hindsight, it's actually just it's less so about toxicking the Kyurem, and it's really just about putting it on a timer. But yeah, just a funny thing there. So here I just got into Metagross, just trying to see what kind of set he is, how he's willing to play it. He goes Gastrodon, so I'm like, easy. I'm just gonna go back out into my Slowbro, and then in my mind, I'm hoping, okay, I can get a maybe I can go Slowbro and get a teleport out on the Kyurem switch, and then get my rocks from that, which is exactly what happens. So that was quite nice. I get my rocks up here. Here I click Ice Punch, I think. Keep going to pause it, don't know why. Okay. This is a good reason to pause. So I Ice Punch. First of all, I'm not entirely sure why I Ice Punched. If he had an Earthquake there, he choose that Ice Punch and you can roost on it. It doesn't actually give me that much in the long term. However, the Earthquake chip on my Metagross is pretty significant because it's going to put me in a pretty compromised position against Kyurem. So because of that, I honestly think I probably shouldn't have stayed into Ice Punch. If he's Defog, I can concede that. That's fine. I can just go Slowbro and then teleport again. It's not the worst thing in the world. I don't think I should have made such an unnecessary play so early on. However, I'm fortunate and it works out. So yeah, cool, whatever. They go Gastrodon. Now, this is the more important part of this turn, is that when they go Gastrodon, I noticed immediately that they don't take rocks. And what this means is that they're boots. And actually, obviously it's like, okay, cool, they're boot sets information, but during the game I made a couple of assumptions based off of this because I can infer some sets I can infer what the rest of their team will be based off of this, and it also based off of the decision they made with their Gliscor. So first of all, because they switched out their Gliscor, I'm inclined to believe that they're not Defog because they had an extremely free Defog or Earthquake. Regardless if you're that type of Gliscor set, you 100% stay in. Next, because you switched out into Gastrodon, that further confirms, now that I've seen that you're Boots, that you're not Defog because there's no reason to run Boots if you're Defog Gliscor. Because the reason why you'll run Boots Gastrodon in this matchup is because I have a Venomoth. Now, last week I saw that Critic and Skeletor kind of got smashed by Hazard Stack. So it's pretty clear that this was something that was on their mind when they were prepping this game. And they must have seen that I used Toxic Spike's Venomoth to great effect against Blitz and Brian. So that was definitely a concern for them in prep. So based off of this, I can infer, okay, they're probably SD Gliscor. Because they're Boots Gastrodon, that means that their Kyurem is most likely also Boots, since they don't have Defog to support a non-Boots Kyurem. Um, which also means that so now I know their Gastrodon and their Kyurem set, which is just knowing their Kyurem set in particular is pretty big because based off of that information, I decide to make the play next turn of clicking Toxic on their Gastrodon, and I make this play because I'm like, okay, I'm like 99% sure that they're Boots Kyurem, even if they're not. I have rocks up in its parent, so it's not completely bad if they're specs. But more importantly, I can put this on a timer, which is going to allow my Rotom to be in a really good position uh, because I've already status secure him, and now I have the Gashon status. So like pretty much everything's in position for my Rotom to pop off now. Um, and I also have a lot of information on their team. So here I go out onto Slowbro and the Gashon once again. They make the play of doubling out into their Kyurem, which is a decent play, but I also know now that their boots are not a boosting item, which actually means that it's relatively easy for me to respond to this Kyurem. So I believe this turn I decide to make the aggressive play of going hard out into my Rotom. Yeah, because as I said, everything's perfectly in position for the set to do exactly what it needs to. So here I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm going to start spamming Nasty Plot. If they had something like Modest Max Special Attack Draco, well, first of all, if they're Draco Media, and they have to be modest to even have a chance of 2KOing me with it. Otherwise, I'll live and I'll get a pain split off next turn, so I'm completely fine. And I was willing to take that risk since I believed I could get a pain split off on this, off on something, probably the Sylveon later in the game if that happened, and then I could switch gears to aiming for some sort of Garchomp break into Zarude clean. But instead they click Shadow Ball, and I'm like, okay, cool. This means I absolutely destroy you. Now they click Sub, which makes sense, assuming that I'm Overheat. Um, and I reveal to be Hex, so this forces them out because they cannot sit on this. Plot boosted Hex are too much. They go onto their Sylveon and click Hellbell, which is completely fine because even though they can remove the status from their Pokemon, it doesn't matter because the time they spend doing that is going to allow me to set up even further. So if they want to go Gashon on my Rotom this turn, then they'll get to a KO'd. Actually, I'm not even sure if they would get to a KO'd, to be honest. Gashon's kind of fat. Actually, let's check. Because I'm not like super offensive. Yeah, Gashon takes that really, really well. But it's okay. I can just click Toxic the next turn, and then I'll be in range. So, yeah. Advantages of having Toxic. Instead, I just Hex. Mainly I Hex instead of Toxicking because um, I wanted to punish them staying in. Maybe Toxic was a better play on hindsight, but yeah. I wanted to punish him staying in. If they go, and my thoughts was if they go Kyurem and I Hex, that's okay. I can just Toxic on a Roost, and then they can't sit on this. But instead they click Wish, which was definitely a mistake because this gives me a pretty free Nasty Plot. And then even though my Hexes are bouncing off, I can just Toxic and pick this off now. And at this point, they really don't have a switch in. They go out into Kyurem, but this thing's just going to get dropped. So yeah, they decide to cash in with their Shadow Ball chip. They get a Spit F drop, which really isn't too significant. And here they can go out into Gashon. They easily live like how we saw the Hex, so I'm forced out. And I'm just going to preserve the Rotom because there's no need to sack this off just yet. So I'm going to go out to my Slowbro and take another free teleport. As here they decide to make the play of going out into Gliscor. Actually, I Toxic, right? I Toxic trying to put it back on a timer for my Rotom. And this is fine. They go Gliscor. I can just teleport out into my Clefable as they SD. I'm unaware, so they literally can never break through this. There's just no way. And because I'm Ice Beam, I'm just going to PP stall them out of Roost, and then this thing's going to die. And at this point, the game's basically over unless the only way the only way they have to win is set up Zero Aura. If they can make some sort of bulk up Zero Aura work here by critting through Clef, then they can win. But yeah, because it's outside of the Zero Aura, they really just have nothing to do because it's only a matter of time till I break through this aggron now that I've removed its wish support. So like Rotom's basically done its job. They have no reliable sustainability against my team now. It's just like a matter of time till their build falls apart. So yeah, they sack the Gastrodon. They could have gone aggron, but like I said, it's still productive for me to chip it down slowly. I would have just gone back out into Slowbro, teleported into Zarude, and done it again. Now they took this as their opportunity to try to set up on my Zarude. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why, but Even if I'm not Scarfed, Darkest Lariat it ignores defense boosts. But yeah, I am Scarf, so I do a million. And here I just uh, make the play of going Metagross. The reason why is that I don't want to risk missing. Why can't I talk today, man? Holy, I don't want to risk missing, uh, because if I miss, then I can potentially lose to this. Or I suppose it's not that I can't really lose to this to be honest. But if I missed, it could get a little bit messy, and I could lose more than one differential. So I decided just to play a clean game, not to fuck around with that shit. Keep it nice and simple. I can just give him the Metagross and pick him off with Lariat, which can't miss. And because he was toxic, then rocks are up. It wasn't boots. This wasn't a problem if he decided to go aggron to preserve it. And here I just go out into Slowbro. They can double into Gliscor all they want, but the Clefable and the Slowbro is just gonna slowly whittle down that aggron. Gliscor's unable to force any real progress, and this game's pretty much just over. So yeah, that was this week's game. Um, yeah, good game. Pretty happy with my results. To be honest, the build felt a little funky going into this, but I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. Probably under prep for the Aggron. Should have done a little bit more in hindsight, but that's fine. I can keep that in mind if we ever play again, if they make playoffs. And yeah, if I was going to give them any tips on how they could have improved on their performance in this game, I definitely would say that, first of all, I think Airballoon Sylveon was a strange bring. I understand why it came, but I just don't think it's effective. Because like it doesn't check Garchomp. You're just relying on me on taking such a niche set where I can just take SD Iron Head, and that's like your entire Sylveon then becomes redundant, right? Like Air Balloon more often than not is just going to be completely useless. Um, I understand that Garchomp's threatening, but it's just like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Um, But yeah, outside of that, yeah, that was just like a minor note on the build that they took. But in general, I think it doesn't really matter. I think the style of build they should have gone for was far more offensive, with something like a Specs, Kyurem, maybe a more supportive Gliscor to enable that, or maybe even a Talonflame just to up the ante even more, increase that pace on your team, and then definitely try to find a place to for Lycanroc on this build, and you can definitely you get a couple of aggressive plays right, and yeah, you can easily cut through my defenses. Um, would have made for a very interesting game had they have taken that type of build. But yeah, I mean at the end of the day, they just got caught out by my breakers. Garchomp was just incredible against their team, which is why I think they should have played a little more offensively. There was literally no stopping the set, and the Rotom against this type of fat team just has a field day, like we saw. So yeah, GG's guys. Best of luck for the rest of your season, and yeah.